Welcome to the Spa Girls podcast, the self-publishing podcast for authors. You're in the right place for the best writing, marketing, and publishing advice, plus interviews with industry experts and best-selling authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
I'm Wendy Vella.
And I'm Trudy J. And this week we have Oriana Leckert from Kickstarter with us. I'm super excited.
Yay!
Welcome, Oriana.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation. We've been seeing some great projects coming out of Kickstarter over the last few years, and I'm super excited to get everything out of your brain and into the ears of our listeners.
I can't wait.
So I'm going to quickly read out your bio and a little bit of information about you, and then we're going to get right into the interview. So Oriana Leckert is deeply passionate about the written word in all its wild and wonderful forms. She's currently the head of publishing at Kickstarter and has long been a writer, editor, and publishing and crowdfunding consultant. She's worked for Random House, MTV News, and was a store manager at New York's famous Strand bookstore, which I've been to. She's written articles for a range of outlets, including Vice, Gothamist, Atlas Obscura, Artsy, New York Post, Slate, and many more. Her first book came out in 2015 and was called Brooklyn Spaces, 50 Hubs of Culture and Creativity. She also co-founded an all-girl graphic novel book club called Jugs and Capes. And was one of the all-time top 100 reviewers on Goodreads. Welcome. That's an awesome bio.
Yeah,
That's
very
awesome. So cool.
Thank you. It's one of the nice things about being older that now it seems like I've done a lot of fancy things.
Yay.
Well, you
some
have.
benefit, right?
Yeah.
So Oriana, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like how you ended up at Kickstarter? Like, where has that journey come from?
Yeah,
What's your origin
totally.
story?
For sure. The other thing I often like to say about being older is that now I can look back on my career trajectory and say, like, yes, this was all intended to bring me. I have had more or less no idea what I was doing for my entire career. I certainly did not ever expect to come to Kickstarter, but this happens to be the best job I've ever had, and I'm really thrilled to get to do it. My background's about half and half traditional book publishing and digital media, so I've been all around the publishing landscape, all sorts of strange jobs. I was also a freelance editor for many, many years and an arts and culture journalist. So, I have done all sorts of things. I guess my immediate origin story from Kickstarter, right before this, I had been tricked into a marketing job, which was the worst job I ever had. It was a sort of year-long slow motion catastrophe from which I was desperate to extricate. And someone that I had known professionally for many years let me know that Kickstarter was looking to hire someone to actually grow their journalism category. And I said, geez, I think this has been a rough go. I think I kind of need to just go back to like proofreading fantasy novels in my pajamas. And she said, I really think you should apply. You might like it. It could be pretty interesting. I did. It worked out. I'm really just tremendously glad that I did. So I've been at Kickstarter. I started at the very end of 2018. So this is the longest I've ever been at any job before. I describe my job as variously one part literary industry expert, one part crowdfunding consultant, one part life coach, and one part cheerleader. So those are the various roles I get to play for all of the myriad creators that I work with. And it is truly just like so wonderful. I love being here so much.
That's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
It's obviously a fun place or a cool place to work, right? Like,
Yes.
you've been there.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Yeah, in my head, I've got, although you guys are working remotely, I've kind of got in my head, you know how those Google head offices used to be with
I
all
was
the,
just going to say the
the
same.
couches and the
People
you
flying
know,
past on skateboards and
You're totally not wrong. We used to have an office, and it was really like a sort of Brooklynized version of that Silicon Valley. We definitely had kombucha on tap. We had a movie theater. We had a roof garden.
Wow.
It was very, I miss
Very
that
cool.
office a lot.
I bet. I
yeah,
bet.
I'd be missing it too. That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about Kickstarter and like actually I don't even know when did it first start and what is the basics like is the point of Kickstarter? Why is it existing and what is the goal or the values or what are you trying to achieve with Kickstarter if that makes
Yeah,
sense?
100%. So Kickstarter started, I'm pretty sure in 2009. Uh,
Mm.
I can I can tell you I even have some like super quick stats. So, Kickstarter is a crowdfunding company. We have I think 25 different creative categories. Every campaign that you bring to life on Kickstarter has to create something new to share with the world. And since its inception, we've had 273,000 projects funded, $8.5 billion pledged by 24 million unique backers.
Mm.
Just in publishing, there's been 69,000 projects launched, 3.2 million backers, and over $380 million pledged to campaigns. So
Wow.
crowdfunding, yeah, should I pause?
No, you're
Massive.
good.
That's awesome. Carry
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Take a sip. Take a breath.
Yeah. So the very basics, crowdfunding, the way that it works is you devise a project, you set a funding goal, and then you ask people to support you on your creative journey in exchange for rewards. If you get enough people to pledge to enough rewards that you hit your funding goal in the time that you've allotted, then you get your money and you get to make your project and you get to delight people all along the way. So I usually share some things that makes Kickstarter unique in the crowdfunding landscape. Um, Kickstarter is a public benefit corporation, which is not something that I knew about before I came here, but it's actually a fairly strict legal and business charter that essentially turns us into a mission-driven for-profit organization. So everything that we do comes back to our mission, which is just to bring creative projects to life. We are all about engendering and increasing creativity in the world. Being a PBC gives us a lot of really progressive sort of like benefits and initiatives. So I actually did a presentation this morning. Where is that? I was gonna share, but anyway, we do we give 5% of our after-tax profits every year to organizations fighting systemic inequality and working on arts and music education. We are extremely transparent about the makeup of our company. We have, I think, 38% of our employees are from marginalized backgrounds, and 100% of our executive team are. Um, we have so a very diverse company, a very queer company, a very progressive company. Yeah, we have pledged to never try to chase down like loopholes to lower our tax burden. We really like want to like pay our fair share. We have a lot of environmental commitments. Anyway, so it's a very cool place. It is really
Yeah,
actually
sounds
a
a
super
I love
lovely.
all that. Love
yeah,
Yeah,
everything
so do
about that.
I.
Yeah.
That is so
yeah,
good. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
And they
So
own it too, which
So
is really cool. Like that's who they are.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So then
totally.
you're not just doing this awesome thing for creatives, but actually
Yeah, yeah,
trying to be good for the
yeah,
world.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's
for the whole
awesome.
world.
So
We also a few more. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, you go. What were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say the other things that sort of set Kickstarter apart, as I said, all projects have to like create something new, and has to be a creative project. So you can't come to Kickstarter for like investment funding, charitable donations, things like that. It all has to be creative work.
Yeah.
Our funding model is all or nothing. So if you say I'm gonna raise $10,000 and you only raise $3,000, you don't get any of the money. People find that a bit scary, but it was actually designed with the creative people in mind because you're going to make a lot of promises during the course of your campaign about, the thing you're going to make and the
Mm.
trim size, your page count, how many illustrations, things like that. And so if you get to the end and you don't have enough money to do that, we've put you in a terrible spot. So the idea is that we don't ever want someone to be trying to
Mm,
bring their project to life with an incomplete budget.
yeah.
Two other things to note. Kickstarter gives you your audience. This is really kind of like built into the DNA of the company, but has become much more important, I would say, over the last few years. Most, as we've all watched all of these social platforms where people have, struggled and struggled to build these like huge audiences that care about their work, and then with sort of a flick of the wrist, the companies change their algorithm or go under or shift
Mm,
their MO, and so suddenly you've lost access to all of those folks who have been supporting your work. Um, Kickstarters, we want you to get closer, not farther, to the people who are your biggest supporters. At the end of a campaign, you get everybody's email addresses. You continue sending them backer updates. During the course of the campaign, we share a ton of demographic information about where your backers are, what time of day, what sort of computer they're on, where they saw, your posts. and they can talk to you as well. We encourage a lot of collaboration throughout the campaign between the creator and their audience. So we're really in the business of like helping you shore up the bonds between yourself and your community of supporters. And then lastly, our Kickstarter's fee is 5%. Um, we only take 5% when a project succeeds, and our payment processor, Stripe, takes a 3 to 4% variable. So if you budget 10% for fees, you'll be more than covered, and it's a lot less than you'll be paying almost any other place you could sell books on the internet.
Mhm.
But that
Wow.
whole aspect of um, Kickstarter basically supplying new fans is huge, really, isn't it? Because if they're going to be invested, like literally financially,
Yep.
then
Yep.
they're going to be invested to follow you further, as long as the product lives up to the expectations, I guess. But that is actually huge. I really love that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, we actually track in the creator's dashboard what percentage of your backers are coming through your efforts versus through the Kickstarter kind of
Mhm.
broader ecosystem. On
Mhm.
average, a publishing campaign will get about 20 to 40% of their backers just via Kickstarter. So that's really our biggest
Wow.
value prop, is that there's a
Mm.
huge community of backers here who just don't know that they're your fans yet.
Yeah,
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 that's so
Mm.
cool.
that's
And do you
interesting.
supply help, guidelines for people just starting out? I'm sure there's a lot of newbies every time that
Totally.
have
Yeah.
no idea, like us.
Where to start?
Yeah, well, so the number one best advice I will give anyone who's even a little bit Kickstarter curious: back some campaigns. That's truly the best thing you can do. Back
Yeah.
10 campaigns, each for $1. Follow the creators out in the world. Just watch what other people are doing. Also, you'll see how exciting it is to be part of a campaign from the backer side, which helps you figure out how to do really nicely from the creator side. But yeah, we have tons of educate. We actually yesterday launched a whole new learning lab and a hub of like videos for various aspects of the campaign process, from like, ideation all the way through fulfillment. We've got a robust help center. We have a team of support staff who are real people, my colleagues. I get to hang out with them at retreats. They are wonderful. And you have people like me on the outreach team, where I'm less within sort of the nuts and bolts of the campaign, but I can offer sort of broad strategic guidance for people who are, have questions like the ones that you guys are asking. So we do try to help out as much as we can.
That's awesome. That's
Wow.
fantastic.
It's very cool.
It's because it can be quite nerve-wracking, like there's so many
Yeah.
different things that as authors we're trying to do, and
Of
different
course.
platforms we're trying to learn. So, and as much as we can see the benefit to something like Kickstarter, it does feel like, oh no, it's another platform to learn and another thing to figure out, and it can kind of feel daunting. So it's nice to know that we've got that kind of access to people who
Yes.
can kind of help you through that.
Yeah.
Totally. And also, you have the benefit of being authors, because authors like to talk to other authors. I mean, there are tons
Mm.
of that's just stuff that like Kickstarter does. There are all kinds of Reddit communities and Facebook groups and there's communities all over the internet and IRL who are working on campaigns together, who are talking to each other about the process of running projects. There are people writing books about this. Anthea Sharp and Russell Nolte, both authors whom I personally know, have written books about how to be an author on Kickstarter and funded them via Kickstarter. So there are tons of communities out there that you can access, so you can talk to other people who are on the same journey that you are.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
really cool. So I was checking it out this morning. I was looking through all the different funding things, and one that caught my eye, I just want to mention it now, is Pride and Prejudice special edition that is done by, I think it was Teresa Wu, or you actually. I'm sorry if I got your name wrong, Teresa. And it was the most beautiful. She's an illustrator, and she's recreated Pride and Prejudice, which is now obviously an open copyright thing, so anyone can use it. And she's drawn the most beautiful illustrations. She's created as a hardcover book, and it's like I totally want to buy it now. I'm going back and buying it after this interview. And so it got me thinking. It's like, so are there different, like there's special editions, which I can kind of see that they'll be a really popular thing on Kickstarter, but are there other ways that authors are using Kickstarter for, like, what kind of projects do they are they putting together for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as the head of publishing, I've seen pretty much everything you can imagine when it comes to the written word. Books of all stripes, special editions are certainly really big right now, but we see all kinds of just like standard book launches, even reprints, with like added materials or like new illustrations, things like that. So truly every kind of book in every kind of genre, subgenre, hybrid genre you can possibly imagine. We also see podcasts and audiobooks and digital media outlets. We've seen literary museum exhibitions, literary documentaries, literary inspired chocolate bars, really like any kind of thing having to do with books you can
Yeah.
certainly find on Kickstarter.
Okay. So you
Well,
just have to have some kind of creative project that you're putting together. It can't just be,
Mhm.
yeah, that makes
so
sense.
what are the incentives for them to, what are the authors giving out as an incentive for them to
Yeah.
be part of it?
I'm so glad you asked that. That is like, I think the rewards are like the most exciting part of the Kickstarter proposition, actually, because, most a book campaign, typically your main reward tier is the book. Perhaps you're doing ebook, paperback, hardcover, deluxe, or whatever, some variation thereof. But after that, you can do anything you want. And I will say, often people think, oh, if you're doing rewards, that means swag, and I have to figure out how to produce tote bags and mugs and enamel pins. People like those things. I wouldn't tell you not to, but you
Yeah.
don't have to. You can actually be so much more creative and get so just like weird and wonderful with your reward selections. Two that I always share. One is a bit risque and the other is not. So Matt Dinneman, who's a lit RPG fantasy novelist, he had a campaign last year for a book called Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is this big sort of like there are, millions of people playing an intergalactic reality show, blah, blah, blah. In his top rewards for $666, he would kill you off in his next book. And for $777, he would let you live. So he would write an actual scene about you as a character
Wow.
to the book. That's like a high end of that, but we also see like people will write deleted scenes, they'll share notes from the field, they'll sell off naming rights to all kinds of, we'll name the dragon after your dog, we'll name the villain after your mother-in-law, we'll name the hero after your son. Anything that you can do with your writing process, you can probably package up as a very cool reward. Another one that I love so much, Willow Winters, who writes erotic romance, she does in her campaigns scene boxes where she will write out the sex scenes as if in a screenplay. And the box also includes all of the accessories used in those scenes. So you can act out your favorite scenes with whoever you want or by yourself, whatever. So I choose those
That's
two because they're
awesome.
like such fascinating examples of like one costs money, the other just costs time, but they're really ways that like you are drawing your readers so deeply into the world of your book. I mean, who wouldn't want, if it's an author you love, who wouldn't want to find an incentive like that to participate? And that's truly just the beginning. I mean, people do all kinds of like parties, people do partner swag. I was just talking to someone else about Penny Reed, another romance novelist who like with her campaigns, she partners with local artisans who make and they make like custom colors of yarn that are only available during the Kickstarter campaign. People make scented candles, people make all kinds of just like lovely things that are true to their world and really, really thrilling for their
Wow.
backers. So yeah, I could spend the rest of this podcast just talking about rewards. I won't. But you can really, the sky's truly the limit with
Yeah.
that.
That's awesome. That makes me want to sit down and brainstorm some rewards. I
Yeah.
love the idea of that. That's very cool. And I guess that's again, it's like it's all about being creative, and the kind of people who are going to be drawn into this are the creative people. So I guess the
And
idea.
clearly it's not genre specific. So you could be a historical writer, you could be a cozy
Totally.
small town, you could be anything,
Totally.
right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything you want.
Are there some examples of authors who've had really successful campaigns? Like, we all know kind of Brandon Sanderson, but like other authors that you can kind of, and is it possible to look up those old campaigns, or are they there, or are they kind of long gone?
Yeah, yeah. So Kickstarter is a vast historical repository of Kickstarter. Every campaign that has ever run, successful or not, is still available on the site. I often wind up saying this in interviews. I'm an expert on Kickstarter because I stare at Kickstarter all day long. And if you
Mm.
are prepping for a campaign, you too can stare at Kickstarter all day long and you can see all the tricks that everyone has ever done and you can adopt them for yourself and find the best ways through. I mean, there have been, literally tens of thousands of successful authors on Kickstarter. I'm not sure what sorts of like examples to share. I really would say just like browse the site and you will see people doing all sorts of cool stuff that you never even realized. I mean, I guess I could pull up. I have a list of like traditional best-selling authors who have been on the platform if that, but I don't know. It doesn't
We want
matter,
indie ones,
like
indie authors
Yes.
Yeah,
as
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
well.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what we
anyone
want.
can
But
come
we can
here
go
and
and
like
look. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is
yeah.
there actually a genre that does better with books?
So when I was doing the journalism category, I used to get this question a lot. And like, here's the way that I would answer. So people would say, like, what US state has the most Kickstarter backers for journalism projects? And the answer was Illinois, California, and New York. But that's because the three biggest journalism campaigns we had ever had up to that point were for local media outlets in Chicago, Los Angeles, and Brooklyn. So
Mhm.
uh, it functions similarly with the genres. I would say there. Romantasy is king right now in publishing overall. There is a huge amount of romantasy on Kickstarter. I'm not going to say that there isn't. Sci-fi fantasy and like has always been very strong on the platform. But because, I'll go back to call it 30% of your backers roughly are going to come from Kickstarter. The rest are coming from your efforts out in the world. And so, 30%, it's not nothing, but it's not everything. So if you're bringing your backers with you, it sort of doesn't matter whether sexy Rumpelstiltskin is, kind of de rigueur at the moment. If you're writing a cozy fantasy and people are coming from all of the work that you're doing to bring them to the platform, you will find more audience members
Yeah.
that way. And also, a little, I think Kickstarter backers are a little less rigid at this moment. Like we're in such this like moment of like trope is king, people who only want to read reverse harem romance novels about lesbians on the moon. That's all they want to find. And they're going to
Yeah.
go because,
Yeah.
Amazon and other booksellers will let them micro target just in that way. On Kickstarter, maybe you thought you were coming here for like some kind of romantasy, and then you see a historical fantasy project, and then you see a memoir, and then, it's sort of people are willing to be much more expansive, I think, in their in what they find on the site than your sort of more typical purchaser at an online or a retailer.
Yeah.
And I imagine it's
Um,
also like for example, the one that caught my eye, the Pride and Prejudice one this morning, I was looking through it and I felt like it was really well set up. She had beautiful pictures, she had great descriptions, she was hooking me in with the right kind of. So are there things that do you notice that in the better campaigns that they are kind of have been put together nicely and they've got yeah, what are some of the things that people should be doing in a campaign
Yeah,
to
totally. I mean, it's a great question. I think, Kickstarter is both like kind of as simple as or as complicated as you want it to be. Certainly, the main things we would hope to see a nice elevator pitch about the plot itself, maybe your trope card if you want to include that, some specs about trim size, page count, paper quality, especially if you're doing bells and whistles, if you're doing fancy features, you want to make sure that those are very clear. If you have samples of the book, photos and gifs, very nice, so people can get a sense of what it will be like to hold it in their hand. From there, you can sort of go in any direction you want to. It's nice. Kickstarter has a bit of a cult of personality. People want to hear about you, the writer, what brought you to this work, what your inspirations are, your budget, your timeline, your collaborators. I mean, again, like look at other campaigns and see what folks are doing. There's not one right way to set up your Kickstarter page. Just think about yourself as like what's going to be compelling, for the buyer, for the backer. What would you want to know that's going to like, you know, pull you in and get you really excited about a project and then
Mm.
add as much of that as you can.
Yeah. Would you say videos are a good way to, or it doesn't matter? Like,
I would say we do see a preference for videos on the site overall. People do like them, and I think on the internet overall, we certainly have moved from words more to videos. I will also say though, there are tons of very successful campaigns that do not have a video. As writers, I hear a lot people come and say, I would do a Kickstarter, but the video is just a bridge too far. That's like too much for me. That's what keeps me off the site. If that's your only stumbling block, don't do it. Don't do a video. You will be fine.
Yeah.
If you want to do a video, you also don't need to go like really crazy about it. Most people on Kickstarter, about 50% of people stop watching a video after the first minute, and almost everybody drops off after the second. So a real short, straight to camera, here's me, here's this cool book project I'm working on. Come along with me on this creative journey. We'll do you fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So,
Wow.
so if we've decided yes, as we do in the spa, we're definitely going to do our own Kickstarter campaigns with Wendy leading the charge because she's got all the
Love
time.
to hear it.
So where do we go? Like, what's the first thing? So we need to figure out what project we're going to do, and
Yep.
then where do we start on Kickstarter? Is there a button?
Oh yeah, there's buttons,
Start
please.
here.
Kickstarter's got plenty of buttons.
Is there a
We
big
want to
button
make
that
it
says
very
start
easy
here?
for you.
Come here.
Yeah, bright flashing lights, arrows. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, it's very easy to find. You just start a project. The act of sort of putting together your Kickstarter project page, we sort of hold your hand through the whole process. It's also going to help you think through, oh yeah, what are my rewards? What would be the FAQs that people might ask me? What's going to be my projected shipping date for sending things out? It'll help you kind of like put the pieces together.
Mm.
Also, if you're going to run a Kickstarter campaign, you really need to do a budget, like figure out, get samples of, the book or different kinds of books you will be producing, any of the rewards that you're going to make. Don't sort of like, oh, probably I can do a print run for a couple $1,000. Like, really no, because you are setting yourself up to like have to complete this big creative project. So make sure you really understand all associated costs. I said this in a presentation recently. And somebody said, not just the books, you also need to add in the cost of bubble wrap and tape and mail, like all of the things that you are going to need. Russell Nolte, who I mentioned before, he's got an article. I have a creator tips page here. I'll share that in case you want to. I don't know if you have show notes, but you could stick this in. It's got a lot of articles and resources for various aspects of running a Kickstarter. And Russell's budget article, one of the things he includes is like also include a line item for a nice thing for yourself. He gets a tattoo of one of his characters after every Kickstarter campaign, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you want to have a nice dinner, get yourself a pedicure, whatever. Don't forget, this is also supposed to be fun and it should like bring you a lot of joy. So yeah, so you're going to be writing out your campaign page, you're going to be figuring out your budget, sorting out all of your rewards, and then thinking through what your outreach and promotion will look like. What are your plans for once this is all live? How are you reaching your audience? How are you getting, to the audience that you have? And then beyond that, to the audience that you want, what levers are available to you? How will you utilize them, etc.
Mm. And so, and the
Yeah.
other thing you
How
need to know is when it's going to end. Is that right? And then,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so you need
Yeah,
to.
you'll pick an end date, you'll pick a campaign goal, and those will be fixed once you have launched. Everything else you can change if you want to. You can add new rewards, you can rearrange your story section, you can change up your images.
Yeah. And then you need
How
the,
long do they run for usually? Is there a sort of standard?
Yeah, we recommend about 30 days or about 4 weeks, especially for your first couple of campaigns. Once you like know what you're doing, if you've run many, you can sometimes shorten that timeline. Really, the majority of your action will happen in the first week and the last week. So people consider that middle part, it can kind of drag. It's sort of like a plateau. But we recommend that because you need time to like activate all of those levers and all of the thing, the last thing you want is to get a great piece of press or like a mention from an influencer or appear on somebody's podcast the day after the campaign closes.
Yeah.
So having that time, it can help make sure, and also that people see it not just once, but maybe multiple times. Not everybody is going to back it the
Mm.
first time they hear about it, but maybe by the fifth time, they're like,
Yeah.
okay, yes, I want it. And then they'll get it.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
So
very
that's what we
true.
recommend, about
We
4
don't
weeks
always
for that reason.
we don't always buy the first time. And I notice because I've heard the advice before to make it the budget as low as possible so that you can definitely reach it. And I was looking on this morning going, oh well, that person 250% of their goal. So they're obviously really good. I can, even though I kind of was like, when I clicked in, it was like their goal was $1,000 or something.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
yeah,
it
yeah.
just the percentage made it seem like they were really successful, and I wanted to be more a part of them. Is that on purpose?
Right.
Is that?
I mean, it's certainly on purpose. That reaction is 100% what they are going
Mm,
for. I would be cautious with that. I know this is a very common advice that you should set your first campaign, the goal for your first campaign for like 500 or $1,000. It's fine if you want to, but I will go back to what I was saying at the beginning. You setting a goal that is actually how much you need to make your thing, it's
mm,
both more honest. I mean, people can tell that like you're, 600% funded, but if your goal was $25, they still know what that meant. And also like you want to have enough money to make it worth it. Maybe
mm,
you have some amount of means and you were going to publish this book anyway and like but if you're going to do all of this work you want there to be enough money at the end that like all of this has been a good experience. So I
mm,
would say consider your campaign goal to be a floor, not a ceiling. It is all or nothing funding, so you don't want to be too aspirational, but I would set it at like the minimum amount that's going to make this all feel good for you. And then
mm,
if you don't raise that money, that's okay. You haven't actually lost anything. In fact, you've learned a lot.
yeah.
Maybe to do some more work to build up how you reach your audience. Maybe this isn't the exact project that people want for you or not right now. Maybe there are ways that you can reduce your cost. There's all kinds of things. You
mm.
will certainly have a much greater understanding of your sort of position within vis-a-vis your audience once the campaign is done. And then you can make all sorts of different decisions the next time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. When I first saw about that being that, oh, if you don't make it to the $10,000, it's all or nothing. But actually, when hearing you talk about it, I'm like, yeah, like if you funding it for $5,000 and it was going to cost 10,000, you're kind of
Mm,
screwed. And
mm, yeah,
You're
and
totally screwed. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and
And
then
out of pocket.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then and are you
Yeah.
going to be able to meet the deadlines for shipping and things like
Mm,
that if you suddenly can't pay for, yeah, so it makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense
Yeah.
when I hear it like that. So that's awesome. Um,
Thanks.
so is there anything else that we need to know as we're thinking about setting up the campaign? Like any other sort of
I think,
tips?
we've sort of talked around the sort of like promotional aspect is really also going to be a huge part of what happens here. I mean, as with anything in the world, you can write the best book that's ever been written, but if nobody reads it, so you do
mm,
want to make sure, and that's another aspect of choosing your campaign goal. You also want to make sure that your ambition matches your reach. You need to do an honest assessment. What does your audience look like? What are your avenues to get to them? If you really do all of those things and also identify signal boosters and amplifiers and like what is really possible for you and let that guide. I don't That doesn't mean I think you should ask for less money, but if you're an emerging writer, if you don't have that solid of a fan base just yet, maybe you start small, do a more modest project that's achievable based on what you think is possible for you. So those are really the main
Have,
things.
have you seen like emerging authors use Kickstarter to kind of as discoverability? Like have they as a way to, yeah, gain
Yeah,
more,
totally.
yeah.
But again, if you are still building your fan base, don't try to do a deluxe leather-bound omnibus that's going to cost you $100,000.
yeah.
Just be careful, be casual, be like, do small things first. And then, yeah, absolutely, you will build your audience campaign by campaign. You will gain new fans every time you do this, both in the running of the project on Kickstarter, but also in the work you're doing out in the world, all of the press hits you're trying to get, all of the like, you know, book reviewers who you're sending copies to, just all of the ways in which you're sort of galvanizing people into this project.
How did Brandon Sanderson get 54 million? What, I can't remember what it was now, and the many
I think it was
millions.
43 million,
Oh, was
42
it?
million.
Yeah,
I mean, he did it by very quickly spending multiple decades cultivating one of the strongest fan bases
very
in
quickly.
fantasy
mm,
history.
mm,
Yeah.
mm.
He also is,
He did that
by no
smart
means a
video.
yeah. Yeah, he also did a very clever video. He's got a huge operation. He's not a one-man show. He has a staff of 80 people. He has a massive
Mm.
warehouse in Utah. I mean, he was surely unbeknownst to him, but he was laying the groundwork for that campaign with all of his choices for at least 20 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
So note to listeners, don't expect
Yes,
to happen
that
when
43
you do
you can
it.
million
expect that.
in your
Probably
first
not.
campaign.
Yeah, yeah,
If
Yeah,
you
yeah,
were,
exactly.
yeah.
Don't
if
set
that's
your
what you were
campaign goal
thinking.
at $43 million. In
Yeah.
fact, that wasn't even Brandon's
What
first
was his
campaign. That was
goal?
the second. Yeah, so he had already done it once. And when I was talking to the team, I think the goal that they set their campaign goal at $1 million. And I said like they were like, we think this is what we're gonna do. And I said, anybody else I've ever spoken to in this job, I would probably have laughed out of the room if they
Yeah.
said that. But for you, I'm wondering, is that a little low?
Wow.
There you
That's
go.
just
Wow, that's
crazy. That's
insane.
awesome though.
43.
I love it.
Yeah, I
I
love
love
it. I
it
love
that
that sort
there's
of success story. It's
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah,
yeah.
Mm,
incredible.
Gotta
yeah, good
Yeah.
on
uh,
them. Is that the
okay.
highest one ever?
The highest crowdfunding campaign in any category on any platform of all time.
Oh
By a long
By
way, I
wow.
by
should
a long
imagine.
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was for
Yeah,
books.
I know.
Yay.
Prior to that, there had never even been a book in the top 10. And now we
Oh, wow.
rule the entire, yeah. It was
Yeah.
a
Go
very,
Brandon.
very proud moment
Go
for me and
Brandon.
for all the
Go
Yes.
publishers.
Brandon. Go Brandon.
Go Brandon for all of
Fun for
us.
Brandon.
Are
Yeah.
there are there any rules, like any things that you should definitely not do?
Yeah, we have, I think Kickstarter.com/rules has our rules, but it's pretty much, it must be a creative project. You can't, no hate speech, no racism. You can't have like guns or drugs for rewards. You can't be doing any money laundering. It's probably nothing that anyone listening to this podcast is likely to run afoul of.
Okay. This is good. Good to
Yeah.
know.
Well, let's hope
Yeah.
so. And hope not.
Right.
Oh,
Okay.
damn it.
They
I was
noted
planning to use a gun as my
it.
reward. Are there what would be the most challenging aspect for doing a Kickstarter for an author, do you think? Like
I
what do
suppose it
they
depends on you. I mean, for some people, the social media is a challenge. For other people, print production
Mm.
feels scary and overwhelming. For others, shipping, logistics, I mean, none of these are that hard. I mean, I actually am like, I'm so happy that books is my domain. There's a lot of stuff happening on Kickstarter that's vastly more complicated. People making these massive tabletop role-playing games, people doing international manufacturing for like
Mm.
smart suitcases. I mean, I wouldn't even begin to start. The
yeah.
barrier to entry to making a book relatively
Really
low
low.
by
Mm.
Yeah.
comparison to all of that. So, I mean, all of the steps are followable. You have to figure out for yourself, for your team, if you're assembling one, like where are the parts that you think are hard and what can you do to alleviate that? I don't think there's any one element of it that is the scariest for everyone. I mean, maybe pressing the launch button, but I think if you're equal parts sort of thrilled and terrified, you're probably doing it right.
Yeah.
So,
A bit like being an author.
if you were using,
There you
yeah,
go.
if you were using a book, it could be an old book, but you just rezhuzhing it up by doing a, special edition, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. You couldn't like if the book already fully exists and is for sale through online retailers, you can't just be like, we're funding that exact same book. But yeah, if you
Yeah.
want to do new
That's,
illustration, add an
yeah,
introduction, a redesign, a cover, a zhuzh, exactly. That'll be
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Things if it's say for example, a author gets tarot cards designed for their or a deck of cards designed with their
Yeah.
illustrations on it or something. Is that considered publishing or is that another thing?
Yeah, tarot. So the answer is yes. Our categories are suggestions, really. I mean, tarot goes all over the site. We see tarot decks in publishing, illustration, art, games, yeah, everywhere. There's not like one central place for it. A card game would probably go in games. Holly Black actually raised, I think, $500,000 last year doing a card game about that using the same IP from one of her series. Sherilyn Kenyon has done a tarot deck. These are like really common things to see. I would say if you're an author making a tarot deck, you should probably put it in publishing. But so the categories are like that's about attracting the general Kickstarter audience.
Mm.
Since again, like so many of the people are coming from like reading about it in a newsletter, seeing it on YouTube. They won't notice when they click onto the campaign what category it's in. That's just more about who's kind of just like randomly going through the site. And our algorithm also, like, even if you're an author with a tarot deck and you put it in games, algorithmically, our recommendation engine is probably going to surface it to a lot of readers also.
Mm.
So I wouldn't get too hung up on which category it goes in.
Mm.
Yeah.
There's lots of
Yeah.
different ideas that people could use that are kind of books
Mm.
adjacent as well, like
Totally.
to
Yeah.
be
Mm.
using the worlds, especially I can kind of see why sci-fi fantasy does really well, because there's a lot of kind of that, the maps and the
Yeah.
I don't know, I can't even
Yeah,
think
there's
of
just
the
so
tarot
many
decks
things.
and
That
yeah,
fantasy
Totally.
element, hey, anything with
Illustrations
that
and
fantasy element,
yeah.
the
it's like, yeah.
trees. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I think
Mm.
historical romance, in fact, all of us write things that could kind of have elements and things that are in, yeah.
That's true.
I think
That's
you should
true.
do a Kickstarter for all of us, Trudy. There you go.
Thanks. I will.
Each,
Done.
one each.
Yeah.
Got all
Cool.
the time in the world. What the heck?
All the time in the world. Sure.
So we've got you've kind of gone through all the basics really. I feel like I just think the main thing might be you need to have the information about how you're going to create and send out the product before you
Yep.
start signing up and doing the actual thing. So you've got to do a little bit of groundwork first. And maybe I would suggest need to go and do the courses and stuff that you said just launched on Kickstarter, but also join some Facebook groups or some Reddit
Yep.
groups just to find out what other people are doing. So are
And
there
maybe
kind of
scrolling through Kickstarter previous.
Yep.
Is there
An
anything else that
excellent
you
recap. You all
suggest?
are listening so well.
I know we're very
We
good
try.
listeners.
We try. We're very good listeners.
So are there common mistakes? Anything that you kind of have seen trip people up that we can
Um,
avoid if
I
possible?
mean, one funny, it's not like a huge mistake, but a funny thing that I often see is writers who are coming from KU who are very accustomed to like hyper specific keywords with that algorithm. You will know their campaign when you land on it because it doesn't say book title. It's like a mashed up list of all the cozy fantasy with this, blah, 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 like with all of the keywords.
Yeah.
That is not, you don't need to do all that on Kickstarter. Our algorithm works on attention. So once you're bringing people to the project, we're going to be surfacing it to more and more people. So you don't need to like go so crazy with all of the micro keywords.
So that's a good
You
point.
know,
So it's about us as authors bringing in a certain number of people, and then the more people we bring in, the more people that the Kickstarter algorithm is going to show it to. Okay,
that's
that's good to
exactly,
know.
yeah, yep,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Sorry, keep going.
Um,
You had others. I just
yeah,
wanted
no,
to point that
sure.
out.
Y- yeah, I mean, we talked about being, realistic about your reach and your, thinking through all of your, but I mean, I guess a big mistake is people who don't bother to do like the budgeting and the
Yeah.
prototyping. Um, I had an influencer do like a cookbook, and then when the campaign was over, she emailed me and said, "So how do you produce a book?" And I was like, "Oh no,
Oh
oh
no.
no, don't
Oh
do that."
no.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
And I was
and I
thinking,
get
what
what
happens if someone does something like that, or someone doesn't budget how much they need to produce a book and then realizes, actually, I can't do this.
They're
What
not going
happens
to fulfill
then?
it. What happens?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
is that
yeah, exactly. I mean, Kickstarter is not going to like send the cops to your door. Really, we are basically facilitating an
Yeah.
agreement between a creator and their backers. So
Yeah.
what you're trading on is your own reputation. I mean,
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
certainly in the history of Kickstarter, there have been plenty of total flameouts. Not so much in publishing. I think likelier someone would like make kind of an inferior product, or it would be much later. I guess that's a common mistake. Whatever you think your the month you should put for your fulfillment for your delivery, add a couple of months, add
Yeah.
6 months, who cares? If
Yeah.
people are willing to support you, as with anything, under promise and over deliver. If
Yeah.
you're a day late from what you've said, people are going to be cranky, so you might as well give yourself all of that buffer.
Yeah.
Do you recommend a time of fulfillment? Like you're saying, they could stretch it out to 6 months, but surely there must be a cutoff point. There must be, or is that
I
up to
don't
the
Yeah, there isn't really any way for us to kind of A/B test, like
right?
if this person had said 6 months versus
Yeah,
12 months. I think,
yeah.
it's like the agreement that you're making with your people. If you're
Okay.
I mean, I think the safest way to run a campaign is when the book is like written and typeset and designed, and you're just gathering the money to send to the printer. But plenty of people do it much earlier. Maybe they need to cover, editorial costs, or like they're still in the earlier process. So long as you've communicated transparently to your supporters and they've said, yeah, I don't mind waiting a year for the book. I'm so happy to give you my $50, then you're fine.
Do
Cool.
people use like
Yeah, cool.
Facebook ads to send people to the site? Is that something that
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I
works?
think as the social media platforms decrease in their effectiveness, I think things like performance marketing and digital advertising are kind of rising up to take their place. What I hear broadly from the community is like, it's really hard to market books. It's continues to be really hard to like do digital ads for like individual books that are not by a massively famous author with a hugely recognizable IP. You could certainly try it. No bad tactics in a brainstorm. Put a little bit of money behind a few sponsored posts and see what happens. If you have the means and are at that level, you can work with a publicist, somebody who actually knows, much more about digital advertising than I do. So yeah, I would say it's worth a try if that fits into your budget and your sort of strategy. I don't think there's a sort of like tried and true way that the code has been cracked for every single writer to be able to advertise on various Meta or Google or YouTube or whatever. It really varies.
Yeah, just varies. I
Mm.
wouldn't suggest someone who's never used a Facebook ad in their life starting to use it for a Kickstarter
Totally.
campaign. Seems like
Totally.
a way to end up in trouble. Okay, I was just curious. It just hadn't occurred to me that you would do that, and yeah, obviously people do.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
there anything else that we need to know about setting up a Kickstarter? Like anything that
I mean, these are all, you have asked such good and smart questions. I don't think there's anything that I don't typically talk about that we haven't covered. There's uh, this is all, like I said, it's both like pretty easy and as complicated as you want to make it. Also,
Yeah.
really fun. Like,
Yeah.
you are curious, start thinking about what you could do and how you could do it. And I think as you brainstorm, as you begin to put it together, like things will sort of come together. It's not that hard to do. So, and hopefully it'll be really delightful when you do it.
yeah,
And maybe
awesome.
take time to do it.
Do the
Not
research. Yeah.
not to think, oh, I
Yeah.
must do that and go in a rush
Yes.
and want to do
Yeah,
it in a couple of
totally.
weeks, but maybe
Yeah.
take the time that it's needed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And
everything.
and it's the kind of thing that can be fun. That's what I like about it.
Mm.
Like
Mm.
give yourself a
Yeah.
chance to kind of brainstorm some really cool
Yeah.
extra things for the
Rewards.
campaign
Yeah.
or the things that you can
Yeah.
do to the book that would be, I don't
Mm.
know, just really a bit out of the ordinary so that people are really going to be drawn into your
Mm.
campaign. And that seems to
Yeah.
me the fun bit of it rather than,
Yeah.
yeah. That's awesome. So any last words, any last pieces of golden nuggets of advice? No?
Oh, golly, I don't think so. I think I'm just like very honored that I got to be on this really cool
And we
podcast.
loved having you on it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
Yeah, no, a
fascinating.
total delight. And I don't know, maybe I hope I'll see you all out in the world someday at a writer
I'm sure
conference,
we
or
You
will.
when
never
you
know. We get
Yeah.
email me
around
and let me know about
sometimes,
your
but
Kickstarter.
yeah.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Cool.
So if someone wants to connect with you or with Kickstarter, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, I mean, Kickstarter.com is where to find Kickstarter. I try not to give my email address out because I don't
No,
know,
don't do
I have a
that.
massive
Yeah.
audience.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
will say I have a weird name. I'm extremely online. I'm not that hard to find. If you find me, I will answer you.
Yeah. Fair enough.
For the
Good.
effort,
Yeah.
for the effort
Yeah.
involved. And share, where
Exactly,
can we be
exactly.
found?
We can be found at spargirlspodcast.com, and that is absolutely everywhere. And we also have a Patreon account. So if you want to come and sponsor us for a coffee, we would be most appreciative. Otherwise, yeah, you can
Find
find
us
us anywhere.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Yes, everywhere. Awesome. Thank you so much, Oriana. It's been a pleasure
Yay.
to
Thank
chat
you
to
so much
you.
for having me.
No worries at all. And thank you to all of our listeners for listening to another
Yes.
episode of the Spa Girls podcast. We've enjoyed having you here with us, and we will see you again next week. Farewell.
Keep well.
Bye.
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 Bye.